Welcome to Books and Beyond with That Guy Jay. I am your host, That Guy Jay. Today, I am joined by Sean. He's one of my mutuals from TikTok. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, Sean goes by Grainshift on TikTok, and his account is primarily photography related.
Yeah.
And so,
Mhm.
I'm just curious to start with, how did you get into photography?
Oh boy. I think it's just like a thing that I picked up in high school. I had a great photography teacher in high school, who really encouraged it. I'm a statistician by trade. So I think like finding that creative outlet for me is something that like I can actually do with my hands. I spent a lot of time in the darkroom in high school and college. I think was really what drew me to the art. And I think I spent a lot of time as like a crafts person, like a crafts photography person, a gear person for a long time. And then in more recent years, I've become much more of a, let's actually think about like what photography is. Let's think about like what this medium means. Let's think about what the art of this is. So that's kind of how I don't know, that's kind of what my journey in photography has been, and that's kind of how I came to starting my TikTok channel.
I would say I actually have a pretty similar journey. I took photography my freshman year of high school
Hmm.
because it was like the coolest elective you could get. And
Hmm.
freshmen didn't normally get it. And I was like one of two freshmen that somehow got in. And
Hmm.
then I took it photography too again as a senior because it took all of high school to get into it again. And I
Hmm.
was very lucky where we had a dark room as well. We developed all our own film. And I think when I took it as a freshman, it was more just cool to be there. And then as a senior, I kind of was trying to pay a bit more attention to what I was doing.
Hmm.
But I was also very into cars. So like it was primarily just a way to take pictures of cars and trucks, stuff like that.
That's
Uh,
awesome. Like, the sheer number of very, very successful photographers today who got started because they wanted to photograph a specific thing. A lot of them are like, a lot of famous photographers these days started out as like skateboard photographers. Like, they
yeah,
skateboard a lot and they just wanted to shoot their friends doing cool tricks, and like they ended up shooting covers of Vogue magazine and stuff like that.
that's one of my favorite photographers of like the last decade or so is a guy named Larry Chen.
Hmm.
He was tied to a YouTube channel called Hoonigans. He did a lot of shooting for them. And he's like one of the only photographers I've followed for a long time. I found myself now getting into looking through photographers' works, and I didn't really do a ton of that before. Like, I would look at other people's Instagrams, but
Yeah.
I'm, like, trying to go back. Like, I currently have checked out from the library now, it's called Looking In, what is it? Robert Frank's The Americans, and it's a bunch of
Hmm.
essays about his famous book and how he influenced, photography and yep, that one. So
Hmm.
this is giant. It's, like, this thick, and
Oh, wow.
it's very cool because it has every picture from the book, and it also has his contact sheets, and it has some of his notes,
Hmm.
and then it has other people's essays kind of talking about how it influenced the scene from someone, on the outside looking in. It's pretty cool.
Hmm.
It's like reading a textbook though, so it is like it's taking me a while to get through. But I
Yeah.
didn't do a ton of that when I was younger. That's something that I'm finding myself doing now, and even like in the early 2000 teens, I was just very into gear. I loved
Yeah.
YouTube channels that covered gear, and I think I spent more time just drooling over gear than actually shooting.
No, I totally agree, and, like, it's interesting that, my copy of Robert Frank's Americans is not very long, right? But you're talking about, like, a big fat thing of, like, essays and commentary that were inspired by the things that they talk about, or the things that are, like, captured in this photo book, and, like, I think that that's amazing, and I think that that's something that people that's I think that's something that I didn't really understand for a long time, is, that just because people in our generation grew up with social media and with the internet and seeing images all the time, doesn't mean we actually have a lot of, like, fluency in terms of, like, how to understand images or how to look at photographs and understand what the point is, right? Like, what is the significance of a specific photograph? I think, like, just from sheer exposure, we have some instinctual understanding, but I think having a critical understanding of imagery is something that the world lacks today. How many people are writing entire thick ass books about, maybe 150 photographs?
Right. No, I would fully agree, and I think that also I'm learning this more just in general with my life that Screens is such a different thing. Like, we touch a screen, but there's nothing tactile to it, and I
Yeah.
found myself leaning towards more analog things in general.
Mhm.
I used to always just be, notes in my phone kinda person, but I have a fountain pen collection now, and I like to put pen to paper, and I like to physically journal instead of using journaling apps, and
Mhm.
I found the same with cameras, and that's why I had a Canon 70D, and I sold it
Mhm.
in, like, 2018, because I needed the money, and for years, I was like, "When I get back into photography someday, I'm getting a Sony." And
Mhm.
then it came time to get a new camera this year, and I was so drawn to Fujifilm because I like the manual controls. It seems more like an old school camera, whereas I've handled Sonys before, and I've seen them described very often as more of a gadget,
Mhm.
and it's like, I want something that's tactile, and I want to, you know not that I'm looking for something to have flaws, but, like, Sonys have, the fastest autofocus and they're tack sharp always, but it's like there's also something to having grain in photos sometimes. There's also something to I'm trying to pixel peep less and
Mhm.
worry more about the overall shot and not necessarily if it's perfect in like
Yeah.
a technical sense.
I think the thing that people don't think about very often is that photography is, uh, like you work within the bounds of physics, right? And when you think about light, there's a push and pull associated with it. Specifically with photography, like for example, you talk about like the exposure triangle, right? Your ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. Understanding like how those things interact with one another is one thing, but to like have a tactile experience of that while you're making your photographs, I think is something that gets lost in modern cameras. For example, like I shoot a lot on I used to shoot a lot on Fujifilm. I shoot a lot on like old Canon DSLRs these days, just because there's no features. There's no automatic features with that.
Yeah.
And with anything that you shoot film, you get your hands dirty by working like by having a tactile experience of the push and pull of the physics that is photography.
Yeah, and that's why I got my daughter a camera recently. She's
Mhm.
16 and I got her um a Canon 5D Classic. I
Hell yeah.
found one on MPB. I took a chance on it cuz it was listed as like very used or however they rate their cameras,
Uh-huh.
and I got it for $129 body only,
Hell
and
yes. That's awesome.
it's in such fantastic shape. I was shocked when I opened it. Like, it's very
Mhm.
clean, and then I just got her the Nifty 50, and I was like, "This
Mhm.
is a great way to learn." Like, you wanna learn how to use a camera, like, this is gonna teach you more than if I let you use mine.
Absolutely. I would have killed for that when I was 16, you know?
And then now I can borrow it when she's not looking, and it's my first experience with a full frame camera that's my own,
Uh-huh.
like, I've shot other people's before, but
Mhm.
I've never, like, actually had a chance to play with it for more than a few shots, and
Yeah, for sure, for
I
sure.
thought back to I learned on a Pentax K1000, which at the
Yeah,
time was probably about 20 years old.
yeah, one of these
So
things.
yeah, exactly. So
Mhm.
as I figure it's like, I'll give her a 20-year-old camera. It's kinda the same thing.
No, don't say that. Holy cow.
Yeah, it
That's
came out
blowing my mind right now.
yeah, they came out in 2005, and I believe they were almost $5,000.
Yeah, they were and at the time, like, that was a really cheap price because the
Yeah,
the only other alternative was, like, an $8,000, like, 1DS camera. So,
yeah,
that's crazy, though. The fact that, like, a Canon 5D is like a K1000 for today's teenagers. That's insane.
exactly. But I've been having a lot of fun messing around with hers a little bit, and now that it's getting to fall, she's a little bit more willing to go outside because it was too hot this summer. So
Mhm.
I'm really excited to that. Like that's I've started thinking about like photo projects I want to do and
Mm,
more than just making, pictures for social media posts or,
mhm.
like I have an idea for I've never made a photo book before. It's just going to be for me, but I'm like very excited about that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, like, I was thinking about this recently, like, there is, I I read this, like, um, criticism of criticisms of do you know the writer Ocean Vuong? Um,
I don't believe
he
so.
he wrote, like, On Earth We Are Briefly Beautiful. He's, like, this literary fiction guy, and, like, he became, like, the literary fiction darling, 5, 10 years ago and became super, super famous, was, like, like in vogue and, was very well known. And then, like, as people like to do with, you know, popular figures, people started to tear him down. So there's like lots and lots of criticism of his work out there. And one of the comments on that unfair criticism is like, people really like to tear apart specific sentences in his work. And like, if you read these criticisms, it's just bang, 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 bang of like his most awkward sentences and just like criticizing those specific sentences. And people don't stop to try to understand like what he is trying to do with his overall novel. And I think that that is like, similar thing for photography and with projects too. I think that a lot of photographers are obsessed with making sentences. Like they love to make, photographs that um, are bangers on Instagram. They'll capture your imagination. They'll capture your attention. And you might have a lot of like, you might have a very strong response to a specific photograph, but I think that there are much fewer people, who are actually working on entire bodies of work, where the understanding is that every photograph is just a part of a larger body.
Right, yeah, and I think, I mean, I'm even catching myself with this. I think that I mean, there's a lot of criticisms of social media in general that I think are very
Mhm.
fair. There is positives to it, but there are also negatives, and I think those get ignored a lot, but I have to catch myself because I take too many vertical shots, and I have to, like, in the moment be like, because it's, like, in my head, I'm like, this is easier than trying to crop it to get it online," but it's like, not every picture has to go online either. Like,
Mhm.
it could be my best picture, and it doesn't need to fit, like, Instagram's, um, aesthetic.
Yeah. But, like, I think that the Instagram aesthetic and just, like, the having the vertical orientation of your phone, like, this is a part of the overall, like, I don't like to use the word zeitgeist, but it's like it's just part of the culture. Like most
Yeah.
of the photographs that we see are vertical and they are on social media. And I think making art that is um, meant for a modern audience should consider that, right? Like if I take a bunch of black and white, film photos that are horizontal that go in a book, um, and, I can't delude myself into thinking, "Hey, that's for a modern audience. That's for, like, that's, like, for Gen Alpha or, like, Gen Z, like, that's for these young people to resonate with today." That, I think, is putting an undue burden on your viewer. So, I think there is something to be said about creating art that has an intended audience. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, tailoring your aspect ratio or, like, tailoring the presentation of your work in a way that, more people within the intended audience can resonate with.
Yeah, no, that's true too. I think I'm trying to just find a healthy balance and not
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like you can use vertical as a crutch too because sometimes it is
Mhm.
easier. Because you can
Mm.
control what's in the frame so much like, it's just simple. It's like
Yeah.
there's ugliness on each side, but it's like, well, maybe there's just a different angle to look at it from where you
Mhm.
don't have to be vertical. And like, I'm really trying to challenge myself with that. I've been doing something on TikTok every Friday. I'm posting a picture of kind of like what I saw and then what I shot and the final result. And I've been doing
Mhm.
it on my iPhone as a challenge because it's harder.
Uh-huh.
And it's like just trying to train my eye to like look for something in like I'm been taking pictures like from my parking lot of my building and like
Yes.
simple day-to-day stuff and just looking for something interesting within, a very ordinary scene.
Yeah.
And that's been a lot of fun and I think that that translates really well to social media.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and, I think there was a time when that was a really novel thing, right? Like, you see a lot of work from Stephen Shore or, like, William Eggleston, and, uh, I mean, a lot of people today still think that he's very, very boring, but I think, like, broadly speaking, the art like, the institution of fine art, initially rejected that work just because it was so, like, "What are you doing? Like, this is just a picture of a car in front of a movie theater." And I think that has become something that is much more understood today with things like social media. So, I
Yeah.
think it's a good thing. Yeah.
I think he was slightly ahead of his time in the sense too that I believe around that time fine arts people thought that there was no place for color photos in in the art world. Those were just for family, snapshots. And I
Mhm.
think he was kind of really challenging that and showing that his framing wasn't just about what the subject matter was, but it was how the colors played off of each other. It was looking at it with a different eye than black and white photography.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's kinda crazy, like, imagine if painters did the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, painters are like, "Oh, Monet uses colors." Like, that's not real art. Like, what are you talking about?
Well,
Yeah.
it's I think that and also with photography because it's something that everybody has done. Everybody's taken a picture at some point in their life, which
Mhm.
isn't necessarily true for other arts. And I think that, like, especially people who get, a little they'll step away from the norm with photography. I think it's harder to get people to understand the medium sometimes, whereas, like,
Mm.
where something will be out of focus and it's just like, technically that's wrong, but that may have been what they were going for with the shot for artistic reasons. And I don't think everybody always gets that.
Right.
I think because everybody's taking a picture and everybody knows what's in focus and out of focus. Whereas, like, if you're a painter, you get a little more leeway because not everybody can do it.
Yeah, I think, like, one example of that I see is, I saw, like, a post on about, Annie Leibovitz and her photograph of the Queen on Reddit, and, like, the top comment on that post was something like, "Oh, like, the composition is terrible because, the queen is neither in the center and she's not even on the rule of thirds. She's, like, way over to the side. So clearly this is a terrible photograph and Annie Leibovitz is super overrated, and this is, just another sign of how dumb, like, the, elite art and, like, art, establishment is." And I felt like, okay, this is an artifact of people who think they understand because, like, they've made photographs, um but just because you've made photographs doesn't mean that you have visual literacy. Like, you can make, legitimate criticisms of that photograph or of Annie Leibovitz, but to say, they're not in the center and they're not on rule of thirds, so it's a terrible composition. I think it kind of is that, like, Dunning-Kruger thing. Though I understand Dunning-Kruger to be, like, not a real thing anymore. But anyways,
Yeah.
digress.
It it's funny that you mentioned that because it's like I don't have a ton of memory from high school of other people's work, but that
Mhm.
just made me think of a specific instance where I had a classmate and she had been on vacation somewhere in South America and she took this very cool photograph of I think it was like a crocodile trapped in some type of fence. And
Uh-huh.
I remember the teacher acknowledging because she went in the darkroom and looked, before the framing was, chosen for the final print, and she acknowledged that there wasn't a framing that worked better, but she still took points away because it wasn't centered and it wasn't on the rule of thirds.
Ugh.
And it's like
Yeah, that's terrible.
and it I mean, I'm pretty sure that was freshman year, so it's like I'm remembering that from a long time ago, and that stands out in my head because there was no better option, and that's
Yeah.
what specifically worked for that photo, and it was a amazing photo, like, it
Mhm.
was perfectly exposed, it was such an interesting shot, like, it was
Mhm.
really fantastic, and it was, like, getting weighed down on the technicalities, and it's like, there are rules to photography, but also all rules can be broken at certain times, especially for something that, if you're trying to portray a certain artistic take on it.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah.
Now now I don't watch as many videos about gear anymore, but I still do check in every now and then.
Mhm.
Do you have any channels that you watch for gear?
For gear, yeah, so I've been really into, like, old DSLRs these days, which there's not as much content for that. Like, if you look up a review for, I don't know, the Canon 6D, like, you're going to find things from, like, 12 years ago, but you're not going to find anything that, like, a modern audience, can appreciate. So I don't know. There's not a lot of gear channels that, I frequent, and that's kind of like the hope that's part of the hope of my content is, like, to kind of fill that gap. Like, I remember, somebody saying that they started making YouTube videos because, what they wanted to watch wasn't on YouTube. So they were gonna make it and, that way the thing that they wanna watch is on YouTube. And it's kind of the same thing for me. Like, I want to see more content on, like medium old gear. So, I do talk a lot about like the 5D Classic or the 1DS Mark III or the Canon 60, stuff like that. Just because like that's what I'm interested in. But I think, like, the gear channel that I've really been enjoying these days, and it's not really a gear channel, is a, YouTube channel called Tin House Studios. And he is a product photographer who shoots, like, global campaigns for, for, like, Coca-Cola or, like, these Fortune 500 companies. And he talks about gear from the perspective of an actual professional. And for him, like, he and, uh has been shooting on like a 5 DSR, which is a 10-year-old DSLR. And, people will ask him, how come you don't buy the new Canon R5 Mark II or whatever? And he's like, as a professional, that's just not something that really makes any sense for me. So he brings like a very fresh take on how to think about gear and like what he finds most important in gear. And I've really enjoyed that perspective.
I think gear has also reached a level where it's so good.
Hmm.
You don't have to like it. I mean, the jumps that are being made is not the same as 20 years ago, where it's like every generation really was like exponentially better than the previous.
Yeah.
Now it's like people complain about some of the smallest things where it's like it's still so good. Like I would argue that a crop sensor camera, like a higher end crop sensor camera from today, is just as capable in low light situations as an older full frame.
Oh, far more capable.
Like
That's for
the
sure true.
technology has bridged that gap. So it's like everything we're getting now is so good that it's hard to complain. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of what works for you.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like my little point and shoot, this is like a micro four thirds ish size sensor, and this thing has much better low light performance than my 5D Classic or my
Yeah.
1DS Mark III. That's just not really up for debate. But I think when it comes to like the threshold for making good photography or like the threshold for making for even being a professional is much lower than people think. Like if you're not shooting, global campaigns, I think that a Canon 6D, which sells for like $150 these days, this is enough to do any professional job. Like if you have this, if you have mastery over this camera, you can use this to shoot almost anything, unless you have like a very discerning client who has a specific requirement. If you're working with Coca-Cola, they're going to have certain requirements around gear. So you go ahead and you rent that phase one camera. But even, this guy who shoots those campaigns, he doesn't own a phase one. He's always renting them. And he shoots all of the other work on a 5 PSR. So I think like the threshold for making good work is much, much lower. A entry level, medium level, like crop sensor camera is going to blow. It's going to blow this out of the water, but this is good enough to do the professional photography too. So it's an interesting space for sure. And like all the improvements in camera technology these days are like AI based. It's like software based, which
Yeah.
not something I'm interested in.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's how phones are capable of doing what people don't really realize that either. The sensors in camera phones are so small that a
Hmm.
lot of what's happening is it's multiple lenses and then software doing
Yeah.
it for you. And that's
Yeah.
personally, I think iPhones are super saturated, and I
Hmm.
think people's eyes have gotten really used to that, which is sometimes unfortunate because like
Yeah.
they're very.
Uh-huh.
I think they're pretty cool and they're very saturated.
Yes, and they're also very flat.
Yeah.
Uh, like the shadows are not very dark and the highlights are not very bright. Um, but what I think is really interesting about that is because iPhone photos are so prevalent, that aesthetic has become like synonymous with authenticity for today's like I hate to say the word youth, but like young people today, right? I saw this critique on, oh shoot, what is the name of the brand? Is Brandy Melville a clothing brand for young women?
Yeah, it
I
is.
saw some like critique on their like catalog photography, and a lot of it is either shot on an iPhone or it's shot on like a mirrorless camera, but edited to look like an iPhone camera because that is synonymous with authenticity and realness as opposed to like commercial photography. So it's interesting that yes, iPhones have a specific aesthetic, but it's also interesting to kind of think about what role does that aesthetic actually play in the way that people understand imagery today. And I think it's an interesting question.
That really is an interesting question, and it makes me think too. I watched a documentary a couple weeks ago about Abercrombie& and Fitch,
Uh-huh.
and how their rise to popularity was so much based off of their aesthetic and
Yeah.
the photographer that they chose to use for all of their campaigns.
Hmm.
And it really is crazy how much that aesthetic can be tied to a brand without people even realizing it. Because
Yeah.
Abercrombie didn't even really show their clothes.
It showed a lack of them, right?
Very much
Yeah.
so.
I mean, I think what's most interesting about Abercrombie's like edit like fashion work is number one, they market their brand by having a lack of clothes, and number two, like how queer their their imagery is, but like it didn't register in that way with a broader audience,
It's
right?
so
Like,
funny how
mhm,
jocks ate up Abercrombie and thought it was so for them,
yeah,
and I guess, like, societally it was, but based upon how they presented themselves, it was very, very queer. Like,
yes,
it was very yeah, it was very queer focused, and it's just
right.
they somehow missed it, which is kinda funny.
It's kinda crazy. If you saw it in any other setting, like, it would register for to you that, like, it is a very queer imagery, but in that setting, for whatever reason, it just didn't, which I think is really fascinating.
It is. But the documentary was on Netflix, I think it was, like, The Rise and Fall of Abercrombie or something. It was an interesting watch 'cause they did focus a lot on that particular aspect and the photographer who really kind of is how they took off because
Oh,
without I mean, without the bags of the models and, I mean, they had some bad practices in terms of who they hired for that similar reason because they had to look
well,
like the models in the campaign, but,
yeah.
it was pretty interesting because it did very much focus on the aesthetic and the artistic license that the photographer took because they used the same I forget his name, but they used him for all of their campaigns,
Okay.
for all of their
Interesting.
magazines that would come out, like, annually and for the shots in the store and the bags and everything. It was all his work.
That's interesting. I mean, makes sense. It makes
Yeah.
sense. They had a very clear brand identity for sure.
They really yeah, no, they definitely did, and
Yeah.
it is so funny to look back on it, like, 15 years later from their peak. I
Yeah.
mean, I and it's like I tried to think back and I'm like, "Did I realize how, like, queer forward they were at the time? Probably
Mhm.
not."
No, yeah. Well, have you been to an Abercrombie store lately?
No, no, not in many years.
I went to I live here in Philadelphia, and they just made one down the street, and I went to it, and what I was really surprised by is the sheer amount of photography that they have on their walls. Like, their walls are covered in, like, film photography, and every single one it's like a museum where they have, like, the photographer's name and their Instagram handle underneath it. And these are, like, you know, these aren't um, clothing photographs. These are, like, photographs of, like, the Brooklyn Bridge shot on 35 millimeter film blown up to the size of a wall, where you can see kind of the scanning artifacts in this print. Um, and it's really interesting to think about the way that they are embracing photography, where it is a lot of I hate to say, like, generic film photography, like the kind of stuff that you would see on, like, Reddit, like r/analog. Like, it's, here's a bridge in New York shot on Portra. Here is, like, a park bench shot on, on Kodak Gold 200. And, like, how and I don't know. I'm not totally sure what messaging they're trying to accomplish by embracing that kind of photography, but is interesting to think about.
That is interesting, and yeah, I think the last time I went in Abercrombie was probably before 2010. I I worked in a Hollister for a brief period of my life in college,
That's
so it's like,
another conversation. Yeah.
yeah, so I spent more time in Hollister, and I grew like, in high school, I was a surfer kid, so
Uh-huh.
Hollister was more for me. Abercrombie seemed kind of prep, but, like, I used to have to
Mhm.
go over there because, I mean, they were, like sister companies. So it's like when they ran out of some type of, merchandising or if they needed, um, price stickers or whatever, is like we would have to
Mhm.
run back and forth. The managers hung out. So it's like that was my
That's
only
cool.
experience being in an Abercrombie.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
kids
was
these days
definitely
don't
it really
Mhm.
was an experience in the early 2000s though, like
Yeah.
from the music to the aggressive use of perfume in the
Yes.
stores and the lighting
For
and
sure. But that's like the whole shopping mall experience that kids these days will never really understand, right? Like, Abercrombie had that, but so did Hot Topic. Like, the
yeah,
smell of latex that that would attack you when you walk into Hot Topic, or, like, if you walked, by a Victoria's Secret, you have to pretend like you're not seeing those photographs as a young teenage boy. Like,
yep.
it's an entire experience from, like, an imagery and sensory perspective uh, that I think really defined my adolescence.
Yeah, I was just talking about this the other day, how crazy it is that, um, within my lifetime, I mean, malls took off a little bit before I was born. I'm 41,
Mhm. Mhm.
but I really kinda saw the peak of malls as a young child
Mhm.
to they're literally just dying now, and it's
Yeah.
even 10 years ago, it didn't seem like maybe 15, but it didn't seem like that was possible. Malls were like
Right.
an integral part of the country, and
Yeah.
that's where you went for everything.
Right.
And then now they just don't exist anymore, really.
Yeah, and I hate to go on my soapbox, but, like, I grew up in Wisconsin, and it's Wisconsin is not the city the little town that I grew up in is not a very walkable city, and I realized that I loved malls because it's like a place where you can walk around and see people. Now
Yeah,
living in Center City, Philadelphia, I'm like, "Oh, I just like people." I didn't
yeah.
necessarily like the mall. I like being able to walk around and, like, see strangers. So that's my whole soapbox about, like, walkable cities.
Yeah, the mall was always super exciting for me as a kid because 'cause I'm from a very small town. I'm from,
Mhm.
Nantucket, Massachusetts,
Okay.
which is also an island, so it was like
Mhm.
going to the mall, that was probably something similar too, where it was just seeing people I didn't know all
Yeah.
in one place because
Yeah.
Nantucket in the winter was very quiet, very
Mm.
you were indoors because you
Yeah.
couldn't you weren't walking anywhere.
Right. Where else are you gonna meet your friends and go get a bite to eat and just chit chat?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and
I
and
get that.
and then it really is, and it's just gone, and I also love walkable cities. I live, I'm just outside of New York City now. I spent many years in New York. Um, I love walkable cities,
Mhm.
and I think, like, if you're from a small town somewhere, like, what I don't even know what the kids do now.
Well, you wanna I mean, okay, when we talking about shopping malls, like, I my favorite thing to do, at the shopping mall was to just spend hours and hours at the Walden Books, the Borders, the Barnes& and Noble, and, like, yeah, Barnes& and Noble is still around today, but, like, I feel like a lot Barnes& and Nobles are, like, pretty like, they have, like, standalone buildings, they're not necessarily attached to malls anymore, but, like, the whole mall bookstore experience is something that I think about a lot to this day.
Yeah, and Borders was very cool in general, and those are just
Yeah,
gone now, and,
yeah.
and the food court too, just hanging out
Mhm.
with friends and just sitting there for hours with, like, a medium fry from McDonald's. That was
Oh,
it,
yeah.
like
Absolutely.
and it
Yeah.
really is bizarre that it's just it peaked and no one realized that was the peak, and then they're just gone.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen in some places that, like, much smaller mom and pop places are trying to, um, move in and have a brick and mortar location, like, I've seen some people on TikTok that rent spaces at malls mostly just for storage for their online business. They're using stores within a mall for a warehouse basically because it's so cheap right now because malls are desperate to rent out space.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So they
Mhm.
technically have a store, but I don't think that they get a lot of sales there. It's more
Mhm.
they have a stockroom and
Yeah.
it's a place to operate out of. And it's
That
like
is
that's such a bizarre shift from what malls used to be.
Yeah. I mean, remember, like, shopping mall photo studios? Like, you would walk into, like, a Sears or something, or, like,
Yeah,
you would have, like, a photo studio where you can just pop in and take pictures with your friends and leave. Man, that was a thing.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too because it with the advancement of phone cameras, it's like
Mhm.
how many people get professional family photos done every year anymore.
Mm, yeah. I don't so I have a theory around where photography is gonna go in the next couple of years, and, like, if you look at photography from, like, 2008, 2009, it's very, very bright, it's very, very clean, it's very, like, idealistic, it's, shot on a 50 millimeter f1.2 lens where, like, the background is blown out, and it's very, like, high production value, and it's very clear you went to a professional photographer. That is, like, clearly not the case anymore where, almost all of, everyone has a smartphone, and like you said, almost nobody gets their picture actually taken by a professional anymore. But, I think this is a part of a larger conversation, but, like, I think that that has something to do with the economy, and as our economy starts to, I don't know, potentially fall into recession over the next couple years, my guess is that that kind of photography is gonna come back. I think you're gonna see a lot more people who are wanting to take, like, professional-ish looking pictures where, if a phone's camera is like 24 millimeters-ish, I think, like, the shift back to, like, 50, 85 millimeter, that's gonna I think we're gonna start seeing that in the next couple of years.
It'll be interesting to see because it also does feel like there is a big push, especially from Gen Z,
Mm.
to wanna go back to more analog and film, and,
Mhm.
like, when my daughter was in middle school, the thing to do was get an early 2000s point and shoot. They wanted
Mhm.
the retro look, which hurt my feelings because I was like, "Oh, I remember buying those cameras new." And they were I mean, I remember being in college in, 2004, 5, around there,
Mhm.
and it was like you had to have the flash on because there was no low light capabilities of the camera, and there
Yeah.
was a certain look to it where it was like people had the red eyes and the blown out faces and dark
Mhm.
behind them. It was like but that's what people are, like, going towards now, it seems, at least on social media.
Yeah.
But I have seen FYP is also based off of what I show interest in, so maybe this is just a bias there, but I
Mhm.
have seen so many more people shooting film
Mhm.
and so many more people talking about actually developing their pictures.
Mm.
Because I think that's another thing where it was for many years now, everyone's just had 10,000 photos on their iPhone, but not many physical prints of those photos.
Well, you know what? It kind of I'm trying to wrap my head around is, like, the whole point and shoot craze. Like, where is that nostalgia coming from? Because personally, every photograph that I ever took on my little point and shoot, it's in a hardware that is probably, like, sitting in a landfill somewhere. Like, those
Yeah.
photos don't exist anymore, and, like, people don't have good, digital, data management practices, but certainly not then. So when these teenagers are looking, for that nostalgic point and shoot look with a blown up face and the red eyes, like, I don't know where that's coming from. Like,
I I don't either. I don't know if it's just from social media or just media in general of
uh-huh.
watching movies from the early 2000s. I really don't
Mhm.
know because like, I look back and everybody's family had, family, photo albums,
Mhm.
and so it's like physical photos were a part of my
Right.
childhood. I would see
Right.
them all the way back to, like, my grandparents' very old ones,
Mhm.
and it's like, I tried when my daughter was young to have photo albums, and it's like, I didn't even stick to it, and I liked
Yeah.
photography.
Yeah.
And I'm also someone that had terrible, digital practices where it's like I had a hard drive crash on my laptop and I was in the Navy in the early 2000s and I lost
Mhm.
basically every photo from my experience in the Navy. Like
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
time in the Navy exists in three pictures and two of them are
Oh,
from
no.
graduating boot camp.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
It is. And it's like, I
Yeah.
mean, I learned my lesson from that, but like, I feel like a lot of people have gone through that too because everybody just kind of relies on the cloud
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
there's no guarantee there. We like to
Yeah.
think there is, but there isn't.
Yeah. No, it's the same thing for me. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to, prints, I've been trying to make an effort of, like, every time I go out specifically to take photos, I
Mhm.
have it's like a Kodak camera that also does, like, Instaprints.
Mhm.
So I can upload, from my camera to my phone and then print on that, and
Yeah.
they're, like, half the size of a Polaroid. But I've been trying to
Mhm.
pick, like, at least 1 to 3 of my best shots from that session so that I
Mhm.
have, like, some physical photos to look back on from all the, getting back into photography and relearning and trying to track my own growth with this. But I've seen that you have a cool method of digitizing your negatives.
Mhm.
Are you printing a lot of those, or are you just digitizing, to have, like, a catalog of them, or how are you handling that?
Yeah, I mean, like, the whole film, thing is kinda weird to me because we're all shooting analog and then we turn them into digital pictures anyways. So yeah, I mean, I scan all my film. I don't have a darkroom that I can work with anymore, so I'm not making any prints. I actually never even learned to make color prints.
Me either.
Yeah, but in terms of like making prints, like, maybe I can run some downstairs and grab them. I have like stacks and stacks of boxes that I have like one of those little Canon selfie printers that makes pictures that are like 3x4.
Right.
And I have literally dozens of boxes full of photographs, like from my friends and from my daily life. And most of the photographs that I take also eventually turn into one of those. So I think it's like it's an experience for my friends to be able to flip through pictures and to kind of see, oh, that's that time that we went to, I don't know, Cape May together, and to kind of experience photography in that way. So that's really fun for them. It's really fun for me. Um, so that's one form of printing that I do. I also have a pretty large photo printer downstairs where I have a handful here too. I have like stacks and stacks of like, let me just grab one right now. I have just stacks and stacks of these, like photos that I've made that I'll print out and keep in frames. And most of them never get hung up, but I just like being able to see them in this form. So yeah, I do spend a lot of my time just printing my photos. Yeah.
I do think that there is something to having a physical photo because I think it is a different experience.
Hmm.
Because it's really easy just to, someone shows you a photo and you can just swipe through like this and see 15 photos in the matter of a couple seconds. And
Yeah.
I don't think you take the time to appreciate them the same way. And I
Yeah.
think that, I mean, the colors look different on a photo versus on
Hmm.
a screen too. Because I think that's also something that people don't realize is that photographs look different on your computer screen versus your iPhone.
Right. Right.
Depending on how you're viewing it digitally, it's going to look different. Whereas, a print is going to be more consistent in theory if you're using
Well,
the same
so
labs and things like that.
right. And let me kind of push on that a little bit. Like, um, I cannot control, like, I can't calibrate everybody's screen that looks at my photos. In other words, I can't control how people look at my photo, like what my photos will look like to them. Like
Yeah,
it's going to look different for every person who looks at them. And even every iPhone screen is going to be slightly different from phone to phone. So as a photographer, I can't actually control the experience that you're going to have looking at my photos when we're talking digitally. When we're talking, like, physical medium, um, I think that there's an argument to be made, like, okay, a print is a print, and every person who sees that print is gonna see, like, colors the exact same way. I think there's an argument to be made there. I would disagree. Like, I think that print is the same as digital in the sense that if you look at, this print photograph, in under a blue light, or if you look at it under a white light, or if you look at this under a yellow light, it's going to be very, very different. And if you hang this on a yellow wall, it's going to look very different than if you hang this on a a green wall or a white wall. It's going to look really different depending on what picture is hanging next to it too.
that's a good
Right.
point.
So when you think about like museum curation or like gallery curation, there's a lot of variables that go into it as well. So I think that, the presentation of your work, whether digital or physical, I think that, I think a lot of people, including myself, like to think and talk about the difference between digital and physical. I would actually push back on that a little bit and say, well, I think that there is a little bit of romanticism associated with it, and that it's not so different. Uh, I think it's kind of similar to how people like to talk about, "Oh, I only like paper books, like, I don't like ebooks, e-readers," and fair enough, like, but a lot of people will talk about, like, "Oh, I love the tactile experience of, like and the old musty smell of pages, and I like to be able to turn them," as opposed to, like, an e-reader where you just click through the thing. But in reality, like, the world that you're gonna experience by when you're actually reading the thing is gonna be the same. Like, whether I read about I don't know, the descriptions of like Rohan on my you know e-reader versus on paper book, like the place that it takes me is going to be the same. And I think like photography is similar. I think that the thing that I like to think, I think the thing that is more a driver of a difference in experience is size. Like, when you're looking at photos on your phone, every photo you look at is the exact same size. Um, where the experience that you have of looking at a photo on your desktop, that is already so materially different than looking at your phone, even though they're both, like, screens,
Yeah.
or versus looking at it on your television. Um, the reason why that's been on my mind lately is I read this interview in the latest issue of Aperture. There is a photographer in here, who talks about how he prints his photos really, really, really large, like the size of a wall large, and they're generally like regular portraits like this. And what he talks about is when you look at a picture like that at such a size, something that is so there's really no room for interpretation in a photograph like this. But when something so objective is blown up to a humongous size, it starts to become somewhat abstract. And I think that is the thing that is really interesting to me. I saw a Cindy Sherman print at the Philadelphia Museum of Art yesterday, and I've seen it a couple times now. But experiencing like that picture on a screen versus seeing that picture blown up to the size of a wall is a very different thing. Like if you look at a picture of a person, but the physical picture is larger than a physical person, that is an experience, right? That is an experience that we almost never have.
Yeah.
Which,
And then
sorry, that's
that's
my
it. No, but in that way, then you're using the medium as part of the overall experience, and
rant.
you can't really do that on any well, I
Mhm,
mean, if you get a big enough screen, you can, but in terms of what people see normally, you can't do that.
mhm. Totally. Yes,
That
absolutely.
well, that's why I've never seen the Mona Lisa, but I have seen people be underwhelmed by it when they see it in person because of how small
Mhm,
it is, because
mhm.
every print of it is fairly large, and then also it's just I think it's so big in everyone's head because it's so
Right.
famous, and it's like
Yeah,
you in that sense, the size really can be like another aspect to the work of art.
for sure, and if you I've never been to the Louvre, but if you see the Mona Lisa and you turn around, on the other wall is I don't remember what photograph it is, but it's a huge, I don't remember what picture it is, but it's a huge painting. Like, it is a, uh, gosh, what painting is it? It's a painting that's, like, the size of multiple walls, like, it's very, very large. So, again, I think that's another instance of, like, where the experience of a specific piece of art is affected by what else is around it. And I think that's what makes it feel somewhat underwhelming is, as you go to the Mona Lisa, you see these grand, ginormous things, and then you have to look at the Mona Lisa from, like, 50 feet away because it's a huge crowd, right? So, again,
Right.
I think that, that experience is equally important to the art as what is actually on the canvas.
Yeah, that's true. That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but now that you said that, I think you did make a video mentioning that, about the about seeing it in person, and I do really think that there is something very different to seeing something on a screen versus seeing a large print of it or even a print of it in general.
Mhm.
The same picture can be viewed very differently.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is I think in a museum at a larger scale, I think people probably also this is just a guess, but I think people probably take more time
Mhm.
to look at the whole picture
Mhm.
and kind of take it all in. It's very
Yeah.
easy somewhere like Instagram or Reddit to glance at it and scroll very quickly. And you most of the time don't realize you're doing it. even if you
Yeah.
think you looked at it for, like, an extended period of time.
Mhm.
Most people, and I'm guilty of it too, is that you like it and you keep it moving. I mean, that's one of the
Mhm.
downfalls to the doom scroll, is
Mhm.
you get in kind of this rhythm where it's
Right.
like, "What am I even doing here?"
Right. It's the difference between reading a Twitter post or an X post or whatever you call it and reading a novel. Like
Yeah.
it's reading in both senses, but it's a very different thing. I think the other place where I have that exact experience is going back to shopping malls. When you like if you walk by a storefront with a humongous like ad campaign, most people glance at it and move by and walk by. And I think it's like the same thing as swiping on your phone. Next time, like, try standing in front of that picture. Like, that's another instance of a photograph of a person being larger than than an actual person, right?
Right.
And it sounds really dumb, but go to the I don't know, like, the LV store and, like, look at the great art that marketing material is and stare at it. Like, it is a different experience. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep an eye out for that because that's a great point. That really is something to think about and try and experience. 'Cause
Yeah.
I also think life moves so fast now in general.
Mhm.
Trends are very quick. Everything about daily life can be very quick.
Mhm.
It's not everyone is very intentional about how they view things.
Yeah. Yeah, intentional about how they view things. I love that. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's very much, a lot of media nowadays is more of a distraction. You're just trying to get the dopamine hit and pass a little bit of time.
Yeah, you're telling me. I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's like sometimes at night I'll be scrolling TikTok and I'm like, it's been 45 minutes and it's like, can I name most of the videos I just saw? It's like
Yeah.
realistically, it's gonna take a lot for it to stand out. It's like, and I liked them in the moment, but it's like I can't even remember them 30 minutes later.
Mhm. Mhm. Can I make a confession? I actually I don't really like short form video. Like, I make short form video. That's the main content that I create, but I almost never watch any of it. And, like, it's I don't know, like, it's not something that I've particular like, I scroll images a lot, so whether that's Reddit or whether that's Instagram, like, I see a lot of pictures, and I do exactly what you're talking about, where, like, 45 minutes will fly by and I won't have, like, noticed. But, like, short form video is something that, like, it doesn't work for me. So I don't know what I'm trying to say by that, but, like, it's just it's something that I've been thinking about. I create a lot of something that I don't really consume.
I consume plenty of it, but I struggle making short form, which is probably why I had the idea to make a podcast because
Mhm.
it's like most of my content is book related. And
Mhm.
I have found that like my longer book reviews, they don't perform well because of, you know, people on TikTok don't want to watch 5-minute videos usually. And it's
Yeah.
hard to get my thoughts out in under 60 seconds
Yeah.
for, an 800-page fantasy novel that I
Which is, like, 1 out of 15 in that series, like, it's a
exactly.
thing.
So it's like I've been trying to push myself more just because it'll give me the opportunity to use I got the Fujifilm X-S20
Mhm.
specifically because it's a hybrid camera and I didn't do a ton of video on my 70D. And it's like,
Mhm.
I wanna get better at videography, and
Mhm.
making longer form videos would be the perfect opportunity to do that, and it's like, I just haven't been doing it. That's one of my goals for I'm already making goals for next year because 'cause I've done a poor job of it this year, but it's like, I wanna make more long form content because I do find it
Mhm.
more interesting too. Like,
Yeah.
I don't watch much TV. I do
Mhm.
watch a lot of YouTube on my TV, and I enjoy longer form content on there, and I enjoy what people make, and it's like, I want to get better at that myself, and
Yep.
I want
And it's
to
Mhm.
learn how to color grade and edit better and all of these things. It's like I just got to do it because TikTok and short form content is just it's easier,
Yep.
but it's like
It is.
it's not necessarily what I want to do.
Right. It's also destroying society depending on who you
Yeah.
ask.
Well, I think it's hard to argue that it hasn't destroyed a lot of people's attention span, like me
Yes.
included.
Me as well, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's interesting to kinda see the rise of podcasts because, like, you would have expected long form content to, like, have died because of the shift towards short form, content, but, like, young people really like it. There's just no end of podcasts out there that young people are listening to,
Yeah.
just because they wanna reject this short form, brain rot type of content, which I think is a good thing, and I think, like, for more creators to shift towards long form, I think is probably a good thing.
Because I think one of the positives of a podcast is realistically, I'm going to put this on YouTube and all the places that podcasts go, but nobody
Mhm.
has to watch this.
Yeah.
And I do this a lot when I consume podcasts as well. I put it on my TV, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
something that can be there with you while you do other things, or it can be something that you don't have to devote 100% of your eyes to. Like,
Yeah.
you can be working on something and still, you know, getting the conversation and absorbing the content, but you don't have to watch. And
Yeah, and, like
you can just listen. Apple Podcasts is the most
for sure.
popular, um,
Mhm.
outside of YouTube. I think YouTube is definitely catching up, but it's like it can be long, but it doesn't have to take 100% of your attention to get the point of it.
Yeah, whereas, like, short form, you really with short form, like,
Sniff on what I'm doing.
um, it really, like, fights for your attention, and I think, like, when I first started my account, I had a and I s I'm, I'm only a couple months into my account too, I'm having a really hard time trying to figure out, like, the right balance because some of the videos that I've made will start with, like, a really attention grabbing thing like, "Hey, did you know that your photography is garbage?" And, like, that will grab people's attention, but is that the kind of content that I wanna put out there? Because I noticed that when I do that and I, like, put others down or, like, say this really crazy thing that's gonna grab your attention, I'm gonna get more views, but in the c like, I get tons of messages from younger photographers saying, "Hey, can you please look at my account and tell me if my work is garbage?" I'm like, whoa, like that is not the message that I want to put out there. Like, I don't want
Right.
people to be making photography so that some idiot who made a short form video can, thumbs up or thumbs down it. Um, so even in like my content, like I'm trying to be more thoughtful about the kind of discussions that I'm generating and the way that I make people feel. And I think it's uh yeah, I think it's a journey where I'm figuring things out and making mistakes, but hopefully getting better over time.
Yeah, and I think that's ultimately should be most people's goal with content in general is improving as you go. And
Mhm,
TikTok is I mean, algorithms are tough to figure out,
mhm.
and it's like I have just come to accept that some of my videos aren't gonna perform well.
Yeah.
I make a weekly video about watches,
Mhm.
and 90% of my followers are not there for the content. I will
Yeah.
say that a lot of the book talk people have been very, like, accepting of it, and they're like, "Oh, I love, learning about someone's interests," and I
Mhm.
appreciate that, but it's like, every time I post a Watch Wednesday, I know it's gonna be lower views,
Yeah.
but it's like, I like creating it, and I like sharing this thing that I'm interested in, so I keep doing it. It's just like,
Yeah.
I didn't do it this Friday, I might still, but I've been putting out videos on Fridays where I wear a Jason mask, and I've created, like, a
I've
dumb
seen those.
version of Jason, and it's like, I find those very funny, so it's like, I keep making them. Those don't do well either. I
Uh-huh.
thought they would because, like, in book talk, there's a whole subsection of, like, masked content because of some of the dark romance books, and it's like, I thought maybe it would catch that wave, but I think I go about it in such a goofy way that it doesn't, but it's like, I find them funny, so I keep making
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well,
Content
like
content is a fine line
Mhm.
though, because it's like, you like, I can't say that I'm on TikTok to blow up and become famous, but at the same time, like, I don't wanna create something that gets no views because it's like,
Right.
we are ultimately there for interaction,
Right.
and it's like, I wanna see stuff that I like, and I wanna make stuff that some people like.
Yeah. Totally agreed. But I think, like, creators who really cater to an algorithm versus creators who are much more willing to express themselves and present multiple aspects of who they are, I think that's a much more interesting and much more needed thing. So I would say continue making adjacent videos.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
fun for me, and ultimately,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
And
going
that's
for.
hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, I
And
love
it's like
that.
I've mixed in photography as well, and when I
Mhm.
started the Book Talk account, that wasn't my intention, but it's like, it is a cool crossover too, though, because it turns out that there's a lot of people who read books that also like photography, so that's been fun
Mhm.
to realize.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agreed.
There's some of these fun crossovers like that. But I think you've done a fantastic job with your content so far, and you've given
Oh,
me
thank
a lot of things to ponder when I watch your videos, and I'm like, "Huh, I didn't think about it that way," like and I think you've probably motivated me to check out more, photography books because that's not something I did a ton of in the past,
Mhm.
and it's something that I am trying to do now.
Yeah. It's like a whole world. Like there is no end to, photography discourse out there. And it's just you can get deeper and deeper and deeper and realize, oh my God, like there's so much that I haven't thought about. And that's what I really enjoy about it.
And I wish I had thought to write down her name. I've been watching a YouTube channel, and she is a European woman, and she
Mhm.
does fantastic breakdowns of, different, famous photographers from the past. Like, she has
Oh.
one about Robert Frank, and it's specifically a breakdown of his book. She has one about, like, was Egglestein's work, was it bad? Like, cause like, so many
Mhm.
people love to say it was, and she did an
Mhm.
interesting breakdown of that. They're like 15 to 25-minute videos that go pretty in depth about, like, one particular photography book, and it's been really interesting.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'll send you her channel, after we finish recording, but I should have written it down because I knew I was gonna bring it up, but
No, I really
so
like
I was confident I would remember, but
that. Yeah, no, I really like that. Yeah, I'll be looking out for that.
no, I usually try and keep these to about an hour, and we have
Mhm.
passed that. But before we go, outside of photography, I always like to ask people for, the beyond portion of this is what else do you like besides, what you're known for on TikTok? What are some of your other hobbies?
Good question. I'm a statistician by trade, so like I like thinking about mathematics, and I think like um, so that's my professional life, and that's my intellectual life. And I'm also a guitar player, so I think a lot about I think a lot about jazz. And I think there's a lot of overlap to everything that we're talking about with jazz and mathematics. For example, you said, "Hey, I had a high school teacher who said, "Oh, your picture is not centered, so here's points off." That's horrible, number 1. And number 2, I think you see the exact same thing in mathematics where you see a lot of people saying, I'm really bad at math." And whenever people say that, I like to, respond by saying, "No, actually, you're probably good at math. You probably had a bad math teacher." Because many math teachers are also going to say, "Hey, you didn't put the alligator in the center of the picture." So that's a whole like soapbox that I like to talk about. And then obviously, I think photography and jazz, yeah, and music, both being arts. I think there's a lot of overlap too that I really enjoy.
That's cool. I didn't realize you played jazz.
Poorly, very poorly.
Hey, it's music is one of my life's regrets. I played in 5th grade, I started playing the trumpet, and by
Uh
8th
huh.
grade, I played the French horn,
Uh huh.
and I gave it up, I think my junior year of high school because I ended up being at this small school. I was the only French horn, so every French horn solo meant a Jason solo, and I did not have the confidence to pull that off, so I just gave up music entirely, and it's one of those things I look back and I was like, "You know what? I wish I still knew how to play the trumpet because that was a lot of fun." And
Oh,
never
that's too
never
bad.
too late to learn, so,
Mhm.
maybe someday I could get back to it, but who has time for all of these
Yes.
things?
Well, I hope that you do. I think it's a very rewarding thing to do. Like, whether you're good or bad at it, I think it does like unlock a different part of your brain.
Absolutely,
So
yeah, my daughter is trying to learn how to play guitar, so,
oh yeah.
maybe that'll be my motivation.
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Now, do you have any other social media that you would like me to share in the description or just your TikTok?
I have a Instagram too. It's the same handle. But the content is the same. I have a couple of pictures on my Instagram. Um, yeah. So there's that. But
Okay,
yeah,
so I'll
just
make sure to put a link to Instagram and TikTok in the episode description. I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your Friday afternoon to join me.
this is so much fun. I'm really thanks for having me.
And thank you, everybody, for taking an hour out of your week to join me on Books and Beyond. Before I go, if you could just take a minute to hit the like, share, subscribe, all of that algorithm stuff, I would really appreciate it. And I will see you again next week on Books and Beyond.